Why did Jungkook keep quiet all this time? What's really going on behind that smile we've always had? Who in his family influenced his life so much that he closed himself off completely? It's not about concerts, it's not about a career, it's about old wounds that have finally broken out. BTS's Jungkook, who always looked perfect in front of the camera, has finally revealed the darkest secret of his life. The secret that made him disappear from the media, avoiding his own family, especially the father. Is this the end of the Jungkook we all know? None of us are ready to hear this. Not the army. Not his closest friends. In fact, it may not be Jungkook himself. Because behind the smile that never fades, behind the magnificent stage, and the voice that shakes the hearts of millions of people around the world, there is one thing that has been deeply buried. Something that can't be cured by applause, can't be removed by a spotlight. And now it's broken. Jungkook, an idol who never shows weaknesses, finally torn apart by one of the most unexpected things, his own family. But what exactly happened? What could make someone like Jungkook, who always appeared professional, choose to disappear completely from the media? What made him turn down all invitations, turn off his cell phone, and even beg the military not to let him go on leave for even a day? Nearby sources mention one word that was enough to silence the world: betrayal. But betrayal from whom? He didn't want to hear his father's name called, said one staffer who was once close to him. That sentence alone is enough to give goosebumps. Because all this time, Jungkook was never seen having problems with his family. We know him as a good son, full of love, always remembering his parents in every Thanksgiving. But now, that picture is falling apart. Have we been fooled all this time? Or is Jungkook just trying to survive an injury he can't tell you about? The question hangs. What has Jungkook's father been hiding all this time? And why is Jungkook so afraid to look into his own past? It all started when Jungkook decided not to attend a big family event that was held in private. At first, many thought he was too busy with his mandatory military preparation. But after he officially entered the military camp, the awkwardness was even more apparent. Jungkook didn't upload a single post, not saying happy birthday to anyone. Even as one of his closest friends celebrated the wedding, Jungkook chose not to give a speech, all of which raises a big question mark. What is Jungkook hiding? Then, there was news from someone who is said to be the idol's distant cousin. Jungkook knows something he should know. And that changed everything, he said softly. This source also mentioned that the secret has been kept for years, since Jungkook was a teenager, maybe even further than that. A family secret. The secret that made Jungkook feel not only betrayed, but exploited. One thing is certain. This confession came directly from Jungkook in a private letter that he did not send to anyone, but was found by one of his old staff who had been entrusted with keeping personal documents before his departure for the military. The letter, although incomplete, contains one sentence that destroys everything. "I love you, but I can't pretend anymore. I am not his son." That sentence made Jungkook's world collapse. Yeah, that's the secret he's been keeping. Not just any ordinary family conflict, but identity, blood, origins. Who is his real father? Do we all know Jungkook? No official confirmation came from the family. But some diehard fans started matching information based on old interviews, childhood photos, to old footage from variety shows featuring BTS members' parents. One of the most surprising things? There is not a single moment in which Jungkook mentions his father specifically. He always says family, my parents, or just mom. Was it an early indication that he was saving something? In the midst of this chaos, some fellow BTS members also looked awkward when asked for comments. Jimin, who is usually full of spirit, only replied briefly, "I hope he can calm down." We were all shocked. Taeil refused to answer. Jin changed the subject.
Suggesho silence.
RM, who used to be the spokesman, simply said, "Everyone has an invisible wound." But could it be that this wound is so deep that Jungkook chooses to close all doors, even to those he has trusted his entire life? Most heartbreaking was the news that Jungkook begged not to be seen by anyone during his military service. Not family, not friends, not a member of BTS. No one. He just wants to be alone.
Calm down.
dive into a wound that has just opened after years of silence. Some fans refer to this as a turning point in Jungkook's life. Because if it is true that he is not the biological son of the father who has been assumed by the public, then all the stories about his childhood, his struggles, and even the motivation he has built up so far could be the source of a lie. And it's not an easy thing to accept by anyone, let alone by someone who grew up in front of the public eye, in the middle of the spotlight, in the midst of love and demands that never stopped. The question now is, what is the next step for Jungkook? Will he return after the military with the same version of himself, or precisely with wounds that have formed a new face? There are whispers that he plans to disappear from the entertainment world for an indefinite period, that he wanted to write
About life.
about the truth, about identity, about the real Jungkook. But there is no certainty of anything yet. There is no official statement. There is no clarification. Just shut up. And it's this silence that makes it all the more painful. Point one thing is clear. Jungkook is no longer just an idol. He is a wounded man. The young man who is asking the world, who am I really? And on that question, the world fell silent, because maybe we all have a side of Jungkook in us. The side that keeps the wound too deep, until it finally breaks, without us knowing who to blame. Point one letter. A few lines of handwriting that no one ever intended to read. But it was there, it all began, and everything changed. The letter is untitled.
Not signed.
But his writing style, his choice of words, and his heart's content couldn't be wrong. It belongs to Jungkook, and among the many bitter sentences, this one fragment struck the reader's heart. He said I should know, but why only now? Why after I've lived my whole life defending a family name that isn't even mine? Who does he mean? Is it his mother? A relative? Or someone who has been silent all this time but keeps the truth? One theory is that Jungkook only learned about his origins when he visited his hometown secretly some time before enlisting in the military. On the way, an old neighbor, an old man who had carried him as a child, mentioned a name unfamiliar to Jungkook. Not his father's name, but another man's name. Someone who, for some reason, feels so familiar to the ear and to the face. Some fans speculated that the old man unknowingly leaked a secret that had already been agreed to be buried forever. And from that day on, Jungkook changed. He started to move away. He refused contact with his father. He even started checking old documents stored at home. Birth certificate. Old photos. But strangely, none of them show the father's name clearly. Just a signature. Just the word guardian. And that's where the puzzle pieces start to come together. Jungkook discovers that his surname, John, may never belong to him legally. If that were true, then everything he had ever boasted about his background became fragile instantly. Not because he was embarrassed, but because he felt lied to. How can one grow to love someone who turns out to be only lending his last name? Jungkook wrote in the next sentence of the letter, emotion, disappointment, and destruction become one. And in the midst of that turmoil, Jungkook faces the most difficult choice, forgive or leave it all behind. When this news began to slowly leak not through the major media, but through the whispers of fellow soldiers in closed community rooms, the first reaction was rejection. No way. There's no way Jungkook is hiding something this big. There is no way that such a warm family harbors such deep wounds. But over time, when Jungkook's absence from the public became more and more conspicuous, when the supposed schedule was removed without explanation, when HYB simply said that Jungkook is focusing on mental recovery and military adaptation, when none of that was explained in more detail, then the question grew into a collective anxiety. What are they really covering up? Why is there no official statement from the family? And even more surprising, why isn't there a single birthday greeting for his father this year from Jungkook? Not in front of the camera, not behind the scenes, not even in the form of small emojis as usual. Some fans even discovered that Jungkook had unfollowed online community accounts where the father used to share about his personal life. And in an interview that is now viral again, the father once said, "He's too good to bear all our secrets. I hope one day he can hate us, because if he still loves, I can't look him in the eye." The interview was then considered only a poetic metaphor about the struggle of parents. But now, with all the new context, that sentence feels much colder and horrifying. Of all the fragments of Jungkook's writing found in diaries and undelivered letters, one sheet stole the show. Just 2 sentences, written in faint black ink, as if incised in a state of trembling. I already know who my real father is, but I can't say his name, because if I do, everything will change. The word everything in that sentence became an enigma that set the fandom world on fire. When the only person known to have a hard heart and always smiling suddenly goes silent in a live broadcast, the world knows something is not right. Jin, BTS's oldest Sanghyun, sat face down in front of the camera at a modest dinner to celebrate their debut anniversary, without Jungkook, without celebration, without laughter. And there was only one word that came out of Jin's mouth when he finally ventured to speak. Jungkook is struggling with his own truth. We all know, but it's not our right to say. That sentence broke the silence. Thousands of soldiers watching the live broadcast simultaneously held their breath. What does that mean? What kind of truth is so heavy that it makes Jungkook choose to disappear from all light, leaving only traces of secrets? And from that moment on, Jin's statement became a kind of bitter spell among fans. We know, but it's not our right to say. The sentence shows that this is not just an ordinary issue. This is a wound that spreads to everyone around. Wounds that cannot be treated with songs, stage, or camera highlights. The only source who gives little idea of Jungkook's current condition is a military trainer who was accidentally recorded by a microphone while talking to his colleague. The voice was not officially mentioned, but the snippet of the recording spread quickly among the army and became a hot topic of conversation. I end the recording. A male voice is heard saying he's very calm. Too quiet. At night, he likes to write. Looked at the sky for a long time. It's like talking to someone you can't see anymore. Who is meant? Is that a reference to his father? Or perhaps to his mother, who in other speculations is said to be the only person who knows the real identity of Jungkook's biological father. Part of Jungkook's note also said that his mother had promised to tell me everything if the time came. But at that time, his mother fell ill. And to this day, the mother's condition is reportedly still unstable. Some insiders said that Jungkook even refused to leave the military camp when given emergency permission to visit his mother. He just sent a letter. A letter that only one person opens and burns after reading. Why didn't he want to see her directly? Is it because that's where the lies started? The song Mayu, which Jungkook once released with a soft and sentimental feel, is now played back by millions of fans with different ears and eyes. The lyrics, once considered poetry for fans, are now reread as if full of cues. All these lights are colored in by you. The moment I met you, I knew you were real. You are my truth. Many have asked, is the you in the song a father figure that he has longed for but never met? Or is it the mother figure who secretly harbored a secret during her life? Or even more surprising, is you himself? The real Jungkook who has been hidden behind names, titles, and sweet stories shaped by the industry and the public. Some fans found that in the leaked demo version of the song among producers, there was one line that was removed in the final version, namely, even if I was born from a lie, I want to be true now. Even if I was born from a lie, I want to be real now. That sentence alone is enough to prove that behind that tender melody lies the most bitter feeling of a child who feels born between two worlds and not fully accepted by either point. One of the old managers who had taken care of Jungkook's personal travel before enlistment finally shared the confession in a closed-door Q&A session. He said that the night before Jungkook entered the military camp, he looked gloomy, sat alone on the hotel balcony, and said quietly, "Please don't let anyone from my family come while I'm there. Even if they come, don't tell me." That was his last request. Not to the media, but to the people who used to always be behind the scenes to help her through the tough days as an idol. The request confirms one thing: Jungkook's wounds are not healing. It is in the process of disconnection. Disconnection from the past, from the roots, from the blood. And that's what makes this story so devastating. Because there is nothing more painful than a child choosing to forget who he is for the sake of becoming his new self. Now, all questions hinge on one moment that hasn't happened yet: Jungkook's return from military service. But the question is not just when, but in what form. Will we see the same Jungkook we've known for so long? With a sincere smile, burning passion, and unconditional love for the stage.